Hello, Pod Fam, and hello, Rachel.
Hi, Laura. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. I had the most productive day of my entire life today, so I'm actually feeling pretty good.
Oh, wow, that's so exciting for you.
Yeah, I was just one of those days where it was quiet enough that I could just cross things off my list and just get them out there. And I was like, wow, I'm a professional.
I love those days. Well, I'm feeling pretty relaxed now because I had to write an exam earlier today,
Hmm.
a professional development exam. I don't have the final mark, but I found out that I passed, so that is all that matters.
That's literally the only thing that matters when you're not in school. So,
Exactly.
well, I am very proud of you personally. You've been studying pretty hard for it lately and, moving up the ladder one step at a time.
One step at a time. So, I think we can both agree, we've hit some pretty heavy topics over the past couple weeks,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
needed something that was kinda chill. So,
Mhm.
we're testing this type of episode out for our listeners. Let us know on Instagram if you like it or hate it, but
Mhm.
we needed something that was just gonna be, like, easy to roll with, you know? Especially, like, Rachel, you've been super busy with work, I've been busy with work and
Yep.
this course, so we're just gonna, chill.
I think we just all need a good laugh,
Yeah.
you know? There hasn't been as much laughter in the last couple of episodes, so I think we need to bring that back a bit. And don't worry, there's still gonna be the occasional little hot take in this one, but you just might not know when they're coming.
Exactly. So we're gonna put the hot button issues aside for tonight. What is your chill beverage this evening?
I am actually having a chai tea this evening.
Oh, that sounds good. You know, chai teas are one of my favorites.
Oh, it's so good. And I know that there's a little bit of caffeine in it, but I don't know. I needed something different and I feel like I just needed to accept the caffeine in order to broaden my horizons because the other option was peppermint tea and I was like, I can't do it again.
You gotta mix it up a little bit. So is this like a black tea based chai tea?
I believe so. It's like the straight chai, like no added flavor to it. So I'm pretty sure it's just the black tea base.
Okay, yeah, likely if it's just like a chai tea.
Yeah, honestly, it's like one of those like Tetley ones.
Okay. So yeah, it's probably a black tea based. So I've also got it's not really a chai tea, it's actually more of a medicinal herbal tea. It's called Quest to Digest, and
Okay.
it's got like a little spice to it, little licorice root, a little bit of peppermint, just a nice blend of like all those things that are very soothing to your system. Because
Mhm.
even though like I'm a pretty good test taker, but internally I know I'm probably like, spiking some stress hormones. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to have a nice relaxing gut tea for this evening just to kind of rebalance myself.
Calm yourself down, and then you can have a good
Exactly.
sleep.
Oh, I'm so excited. So excited. I don't have to stay up late studying.
Not anymore, not until you decide to do the next one.
Yeah, I know. Give it like a month and I'll be like back on the next one.
Yeah, you'll be like, "So guys, I've decided that I'm gonna take a, degree while I work full time, thank you."
Just another chill Thursday night.
Yeah. So, would you like to announce what we're talking about today?
Yes, and I've been trying to think of like, okay, how do we even describe what we're going to be talking about? Pretty much, we're going to be sharing our most favorite binges, and that
Mhm.
is of movies, TV shows, and books. And then
Yep.
we're also going to be sharing our least favorite. And it doesn't mean that we like hated them because there are some where like we love to hate them,
Yep.
or we loved them in the past and now we hate them, or we hated them in the past and now we love them. So
Mhm.
it's kind of gray. It's a little blurry on the lines there. But just to maybe share some shows or entertainment with our listeners that we really enjoy and hope that you enjoy or you've never even heard of it. And then let
Mhm.
us know on the gram if you like it.
Yes, and particularly when we get to the books, we've got some thoughts about a couple things that we've read, so there'll be some drama in there as well.
Likely. But
Likely.
should we kick it off with movies?
I think so. Do you wanna tell me what your favorite is?
Okay, I struggled with this. Like when someone asks you, what's your favorite movie? Obviously, I'm going to say Mamma Mia and Mamma
Oh,
Mia 2, but I did not pick that for tonight. I didn't pick it for tonight. I went with
actually?
like, No. Did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
I
good. Because like
actually didn't even consider it, and now that you brought it up, I'm like, "Damn, I should have done that one."
I know, because I didn't wanna talk about, like, my most favorite things
Mhm.
tonight. I don't know why, but another really favorite movie that has made me feel things is The Big Short.
That movie does make me feel some things.
Yes.
Some good and some real bad.
Yes, and I've always kinda loved this movie. I remember the first time I watched it, though, like, okay, I think I've mentioned it on the podcast a few times, like, I grew up in a real estate family, so I remember 2007 and 2008 very well, and
Mhm.
just watching the movie, it was almost like reliving some of that experience, so it was like, okay, some of it was, like, a bit terrifying and stressful,
Yeah.
but, yeah, I just really loved that movie for kind of showing the inside and explaining what was happening and putting things into terms that were for,
Mhm.
like, everyday people to understand, and I think that really inspired me from, like, my finance background, like, it spurred it on
Mhm.
to want to be a person who makes that language simple,
Mhm.
and then as we can all increase our financial literacy and understand, we can all do better.
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
you've seen that movie, obviously.
I have. I actually had to do a, little mini project on it in university.
Oh, did you?
So, it was like the question of, "Can you describe how it all went down?" And I could describe most of it, but there were definitely some things where I'm still to this day like, "I don't understand how this happened." Just going off of, like, our episode that we literally did 2 weeks ago about life as a millennial, it does
Mhm.
kind of freak me out considering what's going on with housing now, and yeah, I'm scared.
Yeah, and it's actually so fascinating because, so I think The Big Short does a pretty good job explaining what happened, and
Mhm,
especially in times that we are in right now, okay, it's 2021, housing market's out of control.
mhm,
There are a lot of parallels to what happened, but it's actually very different. The
mhm,
underlying effects that, if and when the housing market's gonna crash,
mhm,
it won't be for those same reasons
mhm.
as it did in 2008.
Yeah, well, that's definitely true, and we're not gonna get into, like, the difference of what happened then and what's happening now because
That's what
we would
YouTube
be
is
here for
for.
an
Just
hour.
yeah, if anyone wants to know, like, the differences between 2008 and what's been happening in 2020 and 2021 with the housing market, YouTube's a great resource for that because they'll do actual comparisons of the different economic crises that we've had for the past, like, 100, years.
Mhm,
So, I recommend that as a resource.
mhm,
But, yeah, even though The Big Short is not one of my favorite movies, I just really love the style of it and what you can learn.
mhm. I think it has a very it kinda came out around a similar time, but a very Wolf of Wall Street vibe with how it was shot.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's just because Margot Robbie shows up in it for, like, 5 minutes, but it definitely reminds me of that movie.
Yes, and I always kinda had those movies almost hand in hand a
Mhm.
little bit because they did come out around the same time, and it just kinda, like, shows almost 2 different extremes
Yeah.
of why there's so much distrust in the financial industry,
Mhm.
and, this relates very well, wow, actually, to what I was just doing as a professional course in the finance industry is, especially in Canada, they are trying to instill this methodology of trust and confidence
Mhm.
into investors because of what's happened in our collective memory. It has steered away a lot of people from wanting
Mhm.
to invest and be a part of the economy.
Mhm.
So it's very much like we need both parties enable for our country to grow
Mhm.
and function.
Mhm.
So the financial industry has to be very careful that they don't lose that trust of the people.
What a great point. Unfortunately, it seems like some people don't seem to be getting that, though.
No, no, there's always gonna like anything, there's always gonna be, like, stupid people, there's always gonna be crooks, people who are trying to cheat and take advantage of the system,
Mhm.
but overall, like, it's kind of exposing the wrongdoings and trying to make it better. Whether that
Mhm.
actually happens, they try, but you kinda get what you get.
Yeah. So, watch The Big Short if you
Yeah.
haven't already. I definitely had to watch it, like, 2 or 3 times to understand some of the technical stuff because
Oh, for sure.
they did a really great job of explaining it, but there's definitely some parts of it where upon first watch, you're like, "What?"
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, yeah, like, it definitely is a movie that you wanna watch a couple of times just to get the full appreciation of what they're trying to teach you. So, yeah, awesome movie, but yeah, if people wanna know my favorite movie, it's Mamma Mia and Mamma Mia 2.
sometimes Mamma Mia 2 will it's like, it depends on the day, but I do gear towards Mamma Mia 2 being my favorite.
Yes, I find it a little bit more
Yeah.
relatable in whatever sense that movie can be relatable.
Yeah, see, I think it's just because of the fact that when Mamma Mia came out, it was, like, all about Meryl Streep as Donna, and that was, like, around the age group that our mothers were at the time. So
Yeah,
it's, like, a very well-loved movie around, like, that generation of people, where when this one came out, like, we were, like, leaving school in our mid-20s kinda thing. So we were like, "We can relate." Not really, but we can say that we do.
yes.
So, shall I get into mine?
Yes, what is your favorite pick?
All right. So, my favorite pick of the day was actually Greta Gerwig's adaptation of Little Women.
Yes.
Ah,
Now I haven't actually seen this one yet. I really wanted to, but I just haven't had a chance.
oh my God, you just absolutely have to. There's just something so timeless about that story. And I remember I was like reading the book around the same time, and it just hits you, especially seeing how true to the story she really was. So, the author of the book released it in 1868. So it was very interesting whether it was in the book or in this movie or in any of the other adaptations that came before. The thoughts of women and the motivations and the passions, my heart is the same as, Joe in that
Yeah.
book. Like what she was going through, I can relate to. And like that's just such an interesting thing because I find with a lot of media that is based off of books that were written like a long time ago, I have a difficult time relating to the characters. Like you can definitely tell that it's a product of its time. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it's a true period piece.
Well, either a true period piece or it was something that was written in that period, and you can tell where with this, it's like you could just drop Joe and Amy into 2021 and you would relate to the struggles that they were going through. And I just find that a very interesting thing. And I also think too that there's not a lot of good movies out there that explores the love between sisters. There's a lot of media out there exploring, mistrust or dislike between sisters or women against women. And
Competition.
yeah, the competition. And I think it's just such a pure piece of media, no matter which version of it you're watching or reading, that it's just always going to have such a special place in my heart.
I gotta get on this movie.
You do, you do. Did you ever see any I think there was one with, like, Winona Ryder, like, a long time ago.
Oh, so long ago, but, like, I don't recall too much from that movie, so I definitely wanna go see the remake of it.
Yeah, so love that movie. Go see it if you haven't already. It was Academy Award nominated, and I'm pretty sure won something, so I'm pretty sure most of you have seen it, but I do love to talk about it, so I'm very passionate about Little Women, Laura.
It's a good it's an all-time classic.
It really is, and it deserves that title, so why don't you jump into your bad movie?
So mine, I don't know, this could be, like, a bit of a hot take for some people, but I feel
Ooh.
like for our listeners, they probably are on the same page as me here, and that
Mhm.
movie is Grease.
Oh.
I don't like the movie Grease.
Oh my god, that is a hot take.
Yeah, do you like it?
I have an appreciation for the music, but I wouldn't say that I, like, love it.
Yeah, like, I'm someone who loves musicals, like, Across the Universe, Mamma Mia, like I've said many times,
Mhm.
um, like, everything. I usually love musicals, and I really wanted to love Grease because it seems like one of those, like, cultural icons,
Mhm.
but every time I watch it, I find it just, like, a bit disturbing,
Okay.
and it just portrays such a bad message
I
to
do
women and
agree with
girls,
that. I do
right?
agree with that.
Like, the whole basis of the movie is that you should change everything about yourself so a guy likes you,
Yeah.
right? Like Sandy is a good girl, you know, she's sweet and kind of preppy, and of course she falls for the bad boy.
Mhm.
And how does she keep the bad boy? She changes everything about herself and like becomes a bad girl. So,
Mhm.
I don't know, I'm sure there's going to be someone who's like, "No, it's a great movie," and like they don't do that at all, but in my personal opinion, like that is just what I see
Mhm.
when I watch it.
Yeah, like, 1, those are not teenagers in any way.
No. No, everyone was like
Rizzo
30 years old.
Rizzo in no way looks like a teenager.
No, like she could pass for like 30, 35.
Yeah, I definitely agree, like, the relationship between Danny and Sandy does not translate well, and it's just kind of a bit disturbing because even, like, he kind of maybe changes himself towards the end, but then once she changes herself fully, he's like, no, I'll just go back to myself." There was no
Yeah,
compromise there.
yeah, and then even when you listen to the lyrics of the songs and, like, don't get me wrong, they're fun songs, you know,
Absolute bops.
yeah, but, like, the "Tell Me More" song, it's like, tell me more, did she put up a fight?" Like, it's kinda
Mhm.
rapey,
Yeah,
you
you
know?
make a
Like,
good
I don't
point.
know, there's just a lot of things happening in that movie, and I don't know, I just
Mhm.
you know, it's
Uh,
no Dirty Dancing, in
oh,
my opinion,
no.
which I love that movie.
And
Um
there's some questionable things in Dirty Dancing, but not as
Oh,
much.
absolutely, like, they're very comparable, like, with the exception of a musical,
Mhm.
but it's like Dirty Dancing tried to address things a little bit better.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, like, the one thing that they kind of addressed okay was, like, Rizzo thinking she was pregnant as a teenager and just the judgment that came in that situation, but even
Yeah,
then, it was still, like, it wouldn't translate well if they tried to remake that today.
no. So that is my hot take on Grease. I've never really been a fan of it.
Mhm. I'm actually, like, really shook that you said that.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
I don't know, because I know that you have, like, a big appreciation for, like, especially older movies and older musicals,
I know.
that
I
it's
love
like it's
them.
just yeah, it's just one that I was like, I didn't like, we've never spoken about it before, so I don't know why I would have that in my brain that you, like, loved it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like so many people are like, "Oh, like, that's a musical classic." So, if you like musicals, like, obviously you like Grease.
Mhm.
And you know, I've watched it a couple of times, and
Yeah.
just never hit me like some other musicals did.
It's a product of its time, let's just say that.
Exactly. Yeah, I really struggled though to find a movie I didn't like, but then
Yeah.
when I was, like, scrolling through Netflix, like, looking at past watched movies and that one came up, I was just like, "Oh, bingo."
You're like, "I don't like this movie."
Yeah.
Well, mine I have a similar reason why I hate this one, but it's actually a recent release by Netflix, and it's called Aftermath.
Aftermath, I have never heard of that movie.
Don't watch it.
Okay.
Um,
I won't.
so it was just, like, something that we were just scrolling through Netflix one night, and sometimes we like to put on, like, a thriller or something just because it's fun. And, it's a cheap thriller, like, it gets you going. You're like, "Oh, that was kinda scary, that was a scary jump scare." It doesn't really make a lot of sense of how it's happening, but it is happening. But my main problem with it, you know how when movies release, they say, "Based on true events," or "Inspired by true events,"
Right.
right? This movie, they said, was based on true events, but the main story that they were trying to tell and the story that they said it was based off of were completely unrelated.
Oh.
So it felt like two different movies going on. And it's just, I looked up what happened after. So basically, what the story, quote unquote, was based on was a couple who moved into a house. And in the real story, basically, I think it was somebody had lost out on the bid. Basically, they bought the house, she wanted the house, didn't get it, so she was mad. So
Mhm.
she started like domestically like terrorizing them. So it was like sending inappropriate stuff to their house, like, and kind of like, releasing their information out publicly or putting onto Facebook that they were like bad people, part of bad groups. And where I have a problem with it is that at one point they had posted something onto Craigslist that basically she trigger warning, and I she had, like, a sexual assault fantasy. So, pretty much it feels like they just included that into the movie so that they could have that scene, which I
Oh,
had a big
yeah,
problem with.
like the sex sells trope.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just had because the whole point of the story was just that they moved into a house where 2 people had gotten murdered before because the woman who lived there before, her, like, lover lived in the walls, and he
Mm,
took an obsession with the woman who moved into the house. So, pair that with the fact that there's a whole other storyline of somebody, like, terrorizing them. Where does that mix? Is my thought.
yeah. Yeah,
And
that
I
doesn't sound
just
like a movie I'd watch. First of all, I don't like scary movies or
yeah.
thrillers. I'm too suspicious
Mhm.
after.
Yeah, and I think just for respect for that family who it's based off of, if you're gonna tell the story and just their story, you know?
Yeah,
Don't
don't mix
weave it
in a bunch of
in.
others.
And I'm just gonna, like, abbreviate it because I don't wanna trigger any of our listeners because I know it can be upsetting, but I have a difficult time with any form of, like, TV show or movie putting, like, SA into the episode or into the movie just to put it there as, like, a shock value thing.
Mhm.
Like, unless it has a well-defined purpose, which in my opinion it never does, I just don't think it should be there.
Yeah, like, if it's something based on a true story and that is part of the story, then sure, maybe it's in there,
Yes.
but it seems like some writers and producers, they almost, like, glorify it
Yeah.
in a way.
And again, if you're telling the story and that's part of the story, actually tell the story. Don't just put it in there and say that, "Oh, we were just interested in it, but we wanted to weave it in with this completely unrelated fantastical thing."
Yeah.
So, that's just my take of the evening, and I'm sure there are many people out there who would agree. So, let's hop
Alright.
off of that.
Alright, let's hop off movies and into TV shows. Now, my TV show, it's a guilty pleasure, not gonna
Mhm.
lie, and it's One Tree Hill.
Oh my god. I didn't know you were gonna say that, but now that you did, I'm like, 100% you were gonna say that.
What did you think I was gonna say?
I
Just out of
don't
curiosity.
literally, I don't know, but I know that that's, like, your favorite show, but it did not even cross my mind that you were gonna be like, "One Tree Hill, Chad Michael Murray, yeah, let's go."
Chad Michael Murray.
You know what? He's only getting better with age.
He looks pretty fine. I don't even know
He
how old he is
looks
anymore. He looks great.
he does, like, in that TikTok he did where he was basically, saying something about, the Cinderella story, where he's
Mhm.
just like, "If a girl who you see every day
Oh my
comes
god,
in
yes.
with a mask, a tiny mask, and you don't recognize her, you need help." And I was just like, "Wow, you just look fantastic. You look better than you did 15 years ago."
Ah, yes. Well, he played one of my teenage crushes, Lucas Scott,
Mhm.
on the show, and if you've never heard of One Tree Hill, it was out in the early 2000s and ran until 2012.
It was a good
Um,
time.
ah, that was, like, the height of, like, teen drama shows.
Like One Tree Hill and the OC at the same time. Oh,
Ah, so
so
good.
good.
So good. I think Gossip Girl was also on at the same time.
Mhm.
We just had so much teen drama coming of age
We were so
that was so
spoiled.
not realistic, yet you loved it.
No.
The show itself is about, like, 2 half brothers, and they're trying to not merge their lives, but they've been kept very separate, but, their love for basketball in their small North Carolina town brings them together. And it's just one of those shows, like, yes, there's kinda tropey teen romance, so not realistic,
Mhm.
but what I love in that show is that they really do focus on friendships
Mhm.
and building those friendships, and then they also address a lot of issues that are either, like, hot button topics
Mhm.
or things that, like, real teenagers face, and yeah, like, it wasn't so much like the OC where they had, like, or Gossip Girl, they had, like, obscene amounts of money.
Mhm.
There were things in that show that, like, you knew someone who was going through the same thing that a character was going through.
Mhm.
So, out of all the teen dramas of that time period, I found it to be, like, the most relatable,
The
and I'm not
most
gonna
realistic somehow.
yeah, yeah, like, and, of course, it was not realistic at all, especially some things that were happening in that show, but that's like any show of that era, I find.
Mhm.
TV shows nowadays are trying to be a lot more realistic to, like, today's teens.
Also, diversity was not a strong
Oh
suit,
god.
but it was,
No.
like, 2005, so
No. No, they had a long way to go, but this one is just one that I have definitely watched all the seasons many, many times. It's also one of the shows, like, it probably should have ended, I think, after season 4 or 5, and it would
Mhm.
have been so complete and so good, but the network wanted to keep it going.
Yeah.
So it did stay on for an additional 3 or 4 seasons. I can't
Oh
remember off the top
god.
of my head. Yeah, it stayed on for, like, longer than it should have, but
Mhm.
still at the end of the show, it wrapped
Mhm.
up in a way where, like, you were pretty happy,
Yeah.
although the original ending that they had hoped for would have been, like, the greatest ending of TV show all time.
I just need to watch that show. You've been trying with me for so
I have been
long, and
trying
it's
for
like
so long. We're just gonna watch it together.
I know. I think I just need somebody to watch it with and, like, have, like, a binging day because I don't think it's like a you just watch an episode here and there kind
Oh,
of
no, you binge it.
show.
You binge it.
Yeah. So I think I just need, like, the experience, like, when we watch The 100, we need something like
Right.
that, and
Yeah,
then I'll be
okay.
into it.
Well, it's a date then. We'll watch One Tree Hill. And if anyone else
Yep.
wants to, like, virtually join us watching One Tree Hill, let me know.
Please let us know. Also, for any of our Gen Z listeners, there's gonna be a lot of flip phones, but, embrace
Oh my
it.
god. That was the best. You always knew what year it was based on the phone that the characters had.
And it's not the same now. Now I'm like, they all look the same.
I know, I'm like, "They all look like iPhone." I don't even know what number we're on. Where, like, I remember when I had my first Motorola Razr.
Oh, those were the shit.
Oh, yeah, that was my very first phone, and when all the characters had that too, I was like, "Oh my god, I'm a cool person."
Mhm.
Anyway, what is your favorite show?
So mine's embarrassing, but it's Outer Banks right now.
Oh
Laura,
god, okay.
I
I
love
have, like,
that show.
on and on Netflix, like, the little preview has been at the top of my Netflix for, like, months now.
Yeah.
I just I just can't hit
Okay,
play. It looks just
okay.
ridiculous.
That's what I thought too. I did not wanna watch it for so long, and we honestly started watching it as a joke. And there are things in it that are absolutely ridiculous. Like, literally, whenever this man who is a 30-year-old trying to pretend to be like 16 runs around, he has his shirt 4 buttons open, just flapping in the wind as he runs. Like, that is not realistic. But it gives you a good laugh. And it's funny because I feel like there's an odd sense of self-awareness where the people who are pretending to be 16 are finding it funny at the same time. So there'll be moments where they're like, "Sir, I can't do that. I'm a 16-year-old boy." But you can just see a little glimmer in their eye.
God.
But anyway, so it's very silly, but somehow I was expecting like literally just like a surfing romance show. They surfed one time, Laura. Once. Once
Oh.
that I can
I
recall. And like it just took a turn that I was not anticipating where it just turns into this commentary on classism and how at least in the first and about midway through the second season just the differences in how the legal system treats the rich versus the poor because the whole plot is basically like trying to frame the like poor kid who, his dad passed away. That's not a spoiler. You literally know that in the trailer. But his dad died like he's completely on his own, has no money, and he's being framed by somebody who's like literally loaded. And just the amount of anxiety and frustration I have watching that show shows that they do a really good job of that. So I would recommend just because of the fact that it's very silly, but the subject matter and the way that the story is going, this actually can make you think, which is something that I like to look for in TV shows because I find a lot of stuff now, like you don't even have to pay attention, you can just put it on the background and look up 15, 20 minutes later and you kind of know what happened. Where this, it's like you literally, it's like Outlander. Like you have to pay attention to everything, otherwise you're going to be confused.
Okay, well, next time I'm desperate, I'll give it a try.
Just go in with an open mind, Laura. That's what I did.
Okay, I'll try.
Yes.
I'll try for you.
So, yeah, would recommend. Watch it, guys. It's really fun.
Alright, put it on the list. Let's look at our maybe not least favorite shows. In my case, this is just, like, junk food television where it's
Yep.
awful, but you need to watch it.
Mhm.
So for me, that was Emily in Paris last week.
Oh, oh my god.
Ugh,
It's it really is
it's
just
awful.
garbage.
It's
It's
oh, it's just
trash.
the most trash TV of recent memory. Yet, of course, I watched all of season 1 in one evening, you know?
It
Like,
really you can't look away from the dumpster fire.
no, because it's just, like, the next most ridiculous thing, and I don't wanna give spoilers away because it's on Netflix right now, but, ugh, just it made me angry,
Yeah.
um, 'cause I think I was texting you, I was just like, "What the fuck am I watching? This is,
Mhm.
like, garbage." And you're
Mhm.
like, "But keep watching it." I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna keep watching it," but, ugh, it's just trash.
See, I said for
Um,
you to keep watching it because I wanted you to see how bad it got.
I know, like, honestly, light a dumpster on fire, and that is what that show is, and I know it's, like, trying to be cheeky about
Yeah.
it, but for me, it was the stereotypes of Paris and French people that I did
Yes.
not appreciate.
No, and I think that I could be wrong, but it feels like it was trying to have an air of, like, satire to it.
Yes, it really was, like, it was trying to be really satirical about it, but I don't know, it didn't hit with me, but I still watched it.
Yeah, and the thing is that they didn't communicate that properly, where it came off as a stereotype in itself.
Yeah, like, it's kinda campy, but
Yes.
it's like the stereotype, like, "Oh, French people are mean, they smoke all the time," and,
Mhm.
like, Americans, whenever they go somewhere, like, they don't speak the language, it poked fun at a lot of different stereotypes,
Mhm.
but, it was just trash. I don't really have much else to say about it, it was just a trash TV show.
There wasn't a good enough job done in making it seem like the actors and the story was self-aware. Like, it seemed to take itself very seriously.
Yeah, and it just didn't have many, like, redeeming qualities in that sense, where
Yes.
they tried to correct things or, like, gain a better understanding. It just kinda kept going with the same stereotypes, so
Mhm.
that's all I kinda have to say about that show. What's, your binge-worthy junk food show or most hated show?
Mine is not junk food show because it literally got nominated for Emmys, but it's The Queen's Gambit.
Ooh, you're
Hot
stepping
take.
out on a limb.
I know. Okay, the thing is, foundationally, I can understand why it was such a hit. I still watched the whole thing.
Oh, the acting is brilliant. The cinematography is brilliant.
Oh, yeah. Anya Taylor-Joy, incredible. Like,
Oh my
she
gosh.
killed that role, like, amazing.
Yeah.
But my problem is not the acting, it's not the story, like, it's not, like, how it went down. My issue is how the last episode, kind of like Game of Thrones syndrome, just completely, like, blew it up for me. Because
Really?
I was into it, but maybe I just didn't submerge myself into the inner workings or the underlying tones, but in my impression, she did not learn anything or really develop as a character, which was a big problem for me because it's all about her.
One thing okay, I partly agree with you, but I also, like, partly don't agree because okay, I don't wanna, like, spoil anything for listeners who are watching that show or wanna watch it, but she does, like, open up to other people at the end, like,
Mm, no,
kinda.
I know which one
Like,
you're
she reaches out
meaning.
for help, like, she kind of, like, will accept someone's help.
I think, like, maybe more my problem, because with her friend, she opened up to her and got help and stuff. So that I
Right.
really liked. I really loved that relationship. But I think my
Yes.
issue more came because it's not really a spoiler, but there's sort of like 3 men, shall we say, that are weaving in and out of her life throughout the whole season, right?
Mhm.
And from a woman's perspective, I do understand kind of where she was coming from with a lot of those situations, but she was also like really mean and not a very nice person to them. And I think I just found at the end where it's kind of like they all came together and like forgave her and helped her. I was like, but why?
Yeah, it's just like, did she really earn the forgiveness?
Yeah, I think that's my problem is that what ruined the last episode for me was it felt kind of like everybody just came together to help her in the last 15 minutes just because they needed to wrap up the show.
Right.
Like she didn't really earn their help. Like, there was nothing that happened where they're like, "Oh, I forgive you. I forgive you. We talked it out. I'll help you." Like, I think that's my problem is I found her a very interesting character, but I don't think that she really faced any consequences, and I also don't think it ever felt like the stakes were very high
Right.
because of that. Is it's like over time you saw the pattern of like, "Oh, she's not gonna have consequences for this, so when we're in the next anxiety-inducing situation, why would I be anxious? Because she's just gonna land on her feet."
Yeah.
So, I think that's where my hot take with it comes from.
Mhm.
But, yes, I do understand why it did very well, and it is, in one perspective, a very good show in my brain, but on the other side, it just seemed like faulty storytelling in telling who her character was and turned out to be.
Yeah, like, it could have used a few more episodes to finish out that story arc.
Yeah, because it almost felt like there wasn't enough showing her development and her growth, that it felt almost like she really started the show and ended the show as the same person.
Right. Yeah, I remember when I was watching that show, I kinda struggled to get past the first episode and somewhat the second, and then, like, once it got going, I was like, "Okay, like, it's got my interest now," so I did
Mhm.
watch the whole thing. One thing I really struggled with was, Thomas Brody Sangster, who played Benny. He's 31, but I really struggled to accept him in an adult role.
Remember when he
That's, like,
was
my
like
biggest complaint about the show. I'm just like, "I feel like you're 15. I know
I
you're not,
know.
but
Remember,
you
like,
look
Love
15."
Actually when he was, like, 15 and he looked like he was, like, 8?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I actually thought he did a really good job, though.
Oh, he is excellent in this
He
show.
was one
Like,
of my favorite
highly recommend
characters.
everyone listening, like, do go watch the show because it is great, but that was just
Yeah.
something, like, I was just, like, mentally trying to deal with in the
Yeah.
show.
Maybe that's, like, kind of the foundation of what annoyed me the most was that, I just didn't understand, I'm not gonna say the name, but do you know, like, the guy at the end who she, like, bonds with?
Yeah.
I didn't really understand that relationship.
Oh, that was definitely one-sided.
Yeah, where I was, like, pro Benny.
Mhm.
I would have liked to explore that relationship, is
Yeah.
probably where my foundationally my problem was.
Yeah, because it kinda seemed like she was making some headway with Benny,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then, like, she gets shut down, kinda. I don't wanna
Yeah.
give any I'm not gonna say anymore. How about we move on to books?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, you know what? Benny was in the right in that moment.
Oh, we totally.
So, 100%. But yeah, let me tell you, I got heated after that last episode. I
Alright.
definitely ranted about it for like 30 minutes. Yeah, I took it very seriously. But yeah, on to books, our final category. We're going to actually do it in reverse here. But what is your least favorite or, you used to love it but not so much anymore book and or series?
Okay, so I'm going to go with a series, and the series is The Selection. Now, I'm just
Mm.
little disclaimer. Oh, I know you got lots to say about this one. Little disclaimer, there are 4 or 5 books in the main series, and then there's a bunch of, like, different point of view books and an epilogue book, and I've only
Yeah.
actually read the first 2. So I'm just gonna put that out as a full disclaimer. I do kinda know where the series is going, though, because it's super predictable.
Yeah, sorry
But the
for the
series is
interruption. The
Yep.
main series that you're reading right now is the trilogy about America Singer,
Yes,
and
but
then
then
there's a
there's
couple
there's
more.
2 other books that are
Yes.
now kind of
Yes.
part of the same series.
Yes. I just
Yeah.
wanted to add it in that the part that we're ranting about is the trilogy related to America Singer because she is annoying.
Yes.
Continue.
Yes. So the series is called The Selection, and the author is, Kiera Cass. And,
Yes.
like, no complaints about the writing, like, it's not super complicated, and it's a very fast read, like, literally
Mhm.
for both the 2 books I've read so far, I think I've read them in less than a day. Like, the
Mhm.
2nd book I only read yesterday, and that was because I couldn't sleep at night.
Yeah.
So I literally started reading it, and I was done before bedtime when I
Mhm.
periodically picked it up throughout the day. So really quick reads and just kinda like a good series if you just wanna, like, read something to enjoy it.
Mhm.
The only thing is, granted I've only read the first 2 books out of the original 3. I
Mhm.
have a feeling that all 3 of those books could have been 1 book.
Oh,
Do you agree?
100%.
Do you agree with this? Okay, good.
Oh, like, literally not even a question, and I think it would have done better as one book
I
because
think so.
It really foundationally just feels like a fictionalization of The Bachelor.
Oh god, it's literally about The Bachelor. So the series
Yeah.
itself, it's like kind of on the dystopian world of like a post World War IV, I
Mhm.
think in this world, and it's based out of North America. The U.S. is no more. It's this country called Ilia,
Which,
and
just saying,
yeah.
this world is actually super interesting.
Oh, I want to know so much about this world. I think how like everyone is in. They're called castes, but they're like a class structure, 1 through 8. So if you're a 1, you're like royalty, and then it goes down from there. And they kind of literally have this like bachelor like show when the prince
Mhm.
comes of age and he needs to pick a wife. So they have all these girls from like all different classes. Although, granted, they don't pick very many from like 5, 6, 7, 8. It's very rare. And the protagonist is from class 5. So she's kind of like the outlier of the
Mhm.
group of more like 2s, 3s, and 4s.
Mhm.
And so, like, the system that the author has built itself is so cool.
Mhm.
Like, it's exactly the type of novel I like to read. It's
Mhm.
just the main character herself. I hate her.
She's
She doesn't
horrible.
have she does not have a lot of redeeming qualities, and they try and
No.
go off with, like, a bit of, like, that stereotype of just, like, she's really beautiful and, a really great person and really compassionate, but she doesn't know it herself, and
Mhm.
her temper gets her in trouble, kinda thing, and it's just like, I'm so tired of that stereotype,
Yeah.
and she just makes the dumbest decisions, like, the amount of back and forth that goes on in these 2 books, like, had they just chopped a little bit out, it literally could have just been 1 book.
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
the main event of this, like, bachelor-like contest, of who's gonna be the next princess, it's drawn out. And then I got to end of book 2, and we're still on the goddamn competition.
yep.
I was pissed off, and, like, I just it's
I
a series
mean,
I'm struggling with. I am going to read it because they're really fast reads and just they're enjoyable. Like, I like the other characters in the book a lot. It's just the main character, I just want to punch her.
yeah, when it comes to poor character development, forget about Beth from The Queen's Gambit. Let's just point at her. She really takes the crown.
God.
It
It
just feels like you make some progress and then
You
she's like,
literally make, like
no.
it's the definition of, like, 1 step forward, 5 steps back. Like
Yeah.
like this girl, she never thinks before she makes a decision, and she's got a the prince and this isn't a spoiler, like, it's kind of obvious exactly where the story is
Mhm.
going in this series. Like, the prince is saying that he loves her, and you
Mhm.
know as soon as she's ready, like, he's gonna announce their engagement or whatever, and she's so, like, just wishy-washy, and it shouldn't take 2 to 3 books to be
No.
wishy-washy. Like,
No, and,
a normal
like,
series, it would be, like, 5 to 10 chapters.
and then whenever he does anything that resembles potentially moving on because she's annoying, she gets
She
mad.
she loses her goddamn shit and beats him up. Like,
Oh, did she do
ah,
that? It's been a while since I read that.
she gets very aggressive with him, and I don't think it's necessary.
No. I personally think he deserves better.
He does deserve better. At the end of book 2, I was just like, "Oh, for the love of God, man, will you just pick one of the other girls?"
I know, like, let her go, she's annoying.
Yeah,
She is
yeah,
not
and
it.
it's one of those books, like, I don't know the exact date of when it came out, but it was definitely around the time of, like, The Hunger Games because it does have a
Mhm.
lot of similarities. Hunger Games is by far a better series if you're looking for, like, a great series to read. I would classify it as one of those, like, bandwagon series
Yes.
where they're trying to get in on the dystopian world and, like, the selection and the class differences, and I feel like if the author explored that more and gave it more depth, it would be such an amazing series because her concepts are
Mhm.
so fascinating. Like,
Yeah.
I could read a book just on how that world is built and probably be very happy. It's
Mhm.
just her main character is not connecting with me.
Yeah, like, I think that I could have envisioned that becoming a series where, like, the first book is the competition, and then maybe they have 1 more book or 2 more books that are about the world and the issues of that world and about the main core relationship developing.
Yeah, because
I
it
think it
seems
would have
like
done better.
yeah, because the character herself, like, she seems like she could be very influential, correcting this really broken world, but she's just taken too goddamn long to decide whether she likes the guy or not, that I
Mhm.
feel like the whole series is never going to get to that point.
Mhm.
Unlike Hunger Games, it's not
Mhm.
about the romance, it's about a girl taking on a world that's wrong.
Mhm.
So, that's that's my hot take on the selection. Still read it, people, like, it was a great summertime read,
It's just so
and
much fun.
yeah,
You love to be frustrated, like, you can't stop reading it.
yeah, like, you're so mad at the character that you're like, "I wanna keep reading to find out what happens to you." Right? Like,
Yep.
it's kinda got me in that sense, and it's
Mhm.
it's truly one of those, like, junk food book series as well.
Mhm.
So, enough about this selection. Rachel, give me your series that you love to hate or really hate.
Okay, so this one is another young adult series, and hot take, it actually used to be my favorite
Oh,
when I
interesting.
was a teenager. And it will always, always have a good place in my heart. Don't get me wrong. It's just looking back on the tropes that were presented and in reality, kind of the story that it was telling. I'm like, ooh, that's not good. And it's the Mortal Instruments series. Did you ever read those?
No, I actually haven't.
Okay, I think they must have come out when you were on the tail end of the young adult stuff. It did come out around the same time as Hunger Games, if I remember correctly, but it was very fantasy based.
Okay, and, like,
So,
granted, I was 20, I think, when Hunger Games was like, all the books
yeah.
were out.
So it was originally just supposed to be a trilogy and then it turned into a 6 book series. And I remember really taking off around the 4th book coming out. And concept wise, like when you're just reading it, and you just want to get through the end, not put much thought into it, you're like, wow, this is actually like really engaging. Like it's a really cool concept where it's sort of like an urban fantasy. So there's a lot of fantasy elements, but it's based in our reality. So it's kind of cool.
Mhm.
But where my point of contention comes in as an adult, and I have this issue with a lot of young adult romance books that I read when I was a teenager, is the trope of the bad boy who is mean to everybody except for you.
Oh, yeah, because that's
Yes.
realistic in real life.
Yes, or, you know, the whole, "I'm damaged, but just your love can fix me."
Oh,
Yes.
love that.
So, I Laura, let me tell you, I loved the main bad boy character
Of
when I was
course
a
you did.
teenager. I
You were
did,
probably
and when
looking
I
for him in your everyday life.
See, but that's the problem that I wanna talk about, is it's not necessarily that now I don't like it because I don't like the book, because there's part of me that's always going to love it, but I think why I've started to not look as fondly onto it is the fact that that was presented to young teenagers when they are so impressionable that I
Mhm.
really think that it causes damage in your development where, you know, you're 14 years old, you're too scared to like talk to a boy. So, you know, you kind of like read romances and you're like, oh, cool, this is how I'm learning about this stuff. You start reading about a guy like that who is hot and cold and loves you one day but mean to you the next. And then I find that that just created almost a group or a generation. And this isn't even like a hot take, like, this is a common discussion, I think, amongst people who grew up in our young adult book era. But it like teaches that toxicity and abusive relationships are okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's what turned me off of the series is not the story, it's not depth, it's not lack of depth, whatever. It's just the fact that I think it normalized relationship dynamics that I don't think should be presented to teenagers because I don't think that especially when you're like 13, 14 reading that, you can't read that and distinguish, okay, this is a good part of this relationship, but there's also all this really bad stuff. It's presented as, oh, this is like the bad boy, the hot boy, the romance. Everything about this is fine. Where, you know, when you read that, a relationship like that as an adult, I find that there's more dynamicness to it where your brain is at a point where you can be like, okay, there's a good quality here and a bad quality here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and then when you start getting into those relationships as a teenager and young
Hmm.
adult, then you might almost, like, mask those red flags.
Yes.
right? Because it always worked out in the story,
Yes.
where
Or
very often it doesn't work out in real life.
yes. Or you meet somebody who is toxic or, is putting off the air of they don't really like you that much or they're ignoring you or being mean. And you're just like, oh, he's just damaged, but he loves me really. I can fix him.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where my heart turned against it a little bit.
Mhm.
And I really could list out a bunch of other series where this happens, but this is just one that I think a lot of people have heard of, so would understand the dynamic I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I think just like you said before, where this idea, it can be applied to so many series that we grew up with,
Mhm.
and it would be interesting to see, does that narrative ever change,
Yeah.
or is that what sells books?
That actually is a really good point because I haven't read a lot of young adult lately that would be interesting to, like, pick up a new young adult series and see if they still do that
Yeah, it would be.
or if that trend had stopped. Because Twilight comes to mind as one of the first ones where it was like, "Ooh, the brooding bad boy. That's what we want," kind of thing. But that spurred a lot of those series coming out after it, you know?
Yeah, like, same thing with Hunger Games and The Selection, it was just, like, those bandwagon series that was
Mhm.
just like, "Oh, okay, this author found a formula that sells books, so let's replicate that now a million times."
Mhm. Mhm. When you think of that time too, those especially with the adaptations, they stopped getting released in about 2013, 2014, because the tropes were starting to get old. So, yeah,
True.
it would be very interesting to see if in new young adult series, if those tropes still have hold or if they've dwindled and new ones are taking its place.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe we should go pick up a new young adult series. If any of our listeners know of a new series that we should
Mhm.
check out, definitely let us know on Instagram.
Yes, please
Um,
do.
all right, let's get close to wrapping it up here
Yep.
with our good series. Now, mine I know is not a favorite of yours,
Okay.
um, because it kind of goes back to any book that you were supposed to read for school.
Oh,
For
yes.
some reason, you always hated it. This was actually a book okay, I first read it in grade 6, so I don't even know if it even classifies as young adult, it's probably, like, teen literature,
Yep.
and that is The Giver, and it's actually a trilogy that not a lot of people know about. So it was written by, Lois Lowry, and it really started off my love of the dystopian world
Mhm.
because I don't know, the creators were trying to make a perfect world where there was like no choice, there was always happiness, and nothing bad ever happened. There was no pain, there was no death.
Mhm.
However, there was one person who had to be the keeper of the memories, and that is what this boy Jonas was chosen to do. However,
Mhm.
the more he learned from the giver who was his teacher, the more he realized like how boring this life was. Like they had no color, they had no feelings, no expression of love. And of course, he learned about what death really was and really learned what a full human experience was. So, okay, I can't really give away too much, but it's really exploring this like utopian society of
Mhm.
sameness. And then without being really like showy about it,
Mhm.
and I made a mistake, I said trilogy when I first introduced the series, there's actually 4 books.
Okay.
Um, there's Gathering Blue, Messenger, and Sun,
Mhm.
and without really knowing it, all these books are connected,
Yeah.
and they all come together at the end, and they really just explore all these different possibilities of what society could be. So you have
Mhm.
one in the first one where it's very advanced, however, they want everything the same. The next one
Mhm.
is very primitive, and it goes back to, only the strongest survive. And then in the other 2 books, that's where they start to merge together, and you realize it really does come full circle with all the characters.
Mhm.
So that is just a series I have always loved. I read all the books, I don't even know how many times.
Mhm.
And again, very simple, fast reads. And looking at the genre, it is a young adult fiction. Oh, and also The Giver was turned into a movie and Taylor Swift is in it.
I do remember that. I don't think I ever saw the movie, but I do remember hearing Taylor Swift was in it.
Yeah, the movie's
Um,
not as good as the books, like, you gotta read the books.
Yeah. I think for me, I need to definitely try to sit down and read it again because I think the problem is that 1, I hated reading books when my teachers told me to do it, but 2, I think I was too young.
Oh, you would have been so young
Yeah, like, I
for that. Like, I was in
definitely.
grade 6 when I first the book did come out in '93,
Mhm.
but I remember being in grade 6 when I had to
Yeah.
read this.
Yeah, like, I for some reason, I think I remember reading it in, like, grade 4 or 5,
Mhm.
and I just don't think I had again, like we were talking about
The mental capacity.
the mental capacity that your brain is at a certain age. I just don't think I really understood what they were trying to say at the
Yeah,
time.
like, I've actually it's one of those series and books that I appreciate the older I am
Mhm.
because I can fully understand what the author is trying to convey with the
Mhm.
themes of the books.
Mhm.
Where, like, when I would have first read it when I was, like, 12, 11, 12,
Yeah.
so much of it would have gone over my head, but on your
Yeah.
point about, like, hating books you had to read in school, like, there's so many that I have gone back and reread as an adult, and I'm like, "Wow, this is a really great book," like, The
Yeah.
Chrysalids, Handmaid's Tale, um, Brave New World, like,
Mhm.
all those books I love as an adult, yet as a
Mhm.
teenager, I hated them. They
See,
were
I
terrible.
honestly think though it's genuinely because of the fact that 1, you just didn't like being told to read things, but I also don't think they were introduced at the right age
Yeah, like, they were too lofty.
in their writing or what they were trying to convey.
Yeah, like, it was just too advanced for what
Mhm.
we were capable of maybe truly understanding at that age.
Well, I also think that since you read The Handmaid's Tale, that's a lot for a teenager.
That was in grade 10.
That's a lot
I know,
for
I
being
read it
15.
again then when I would have been in, like, first year university, like,
Mhm.
just for fun because I had the book and I didn't really remember much from when I read it in high
Mhm.
school, and I didn't really appreciate it, but when I picked it up as an adult, I'm just like, "This is a great book." Like, I understand this world and, like, can relate it to our own, and then, Margaret Atwood also came out with The Testaments a couple
Mhm.
years ago, and I read that and I loved it too. So, yeah, I think schools, they just kinda push some very advanced theories on maybe not so ready minds.
I'm just surprised that they had you read The Handmaid's Tale. Concept and the themes aside, just the activities in that book are a lot
Oh,
for children.
yeah, and, like, I don't know if you've read this other book, but this is another one that it wasn't controversial, but, like, very much along the same lines of Handmaid's Tale, and it was called, Into the Forest. It dealt with, like, themes of rape, and we were reading it in, like, grade 11 or even
Oh my
younger,
god.
actually, what year? There were a few books that we read, but, like, I just remember reading them when I was
When you
still
were a
very
child.
young. Yeah, like, I was still a child.
Yeah, I don't really agree with that, but maybe it's changed, like, with kids now, and you wouldn't read that today
Yeah, one book
in your 10th grade class.
yeah, one book I have tried reading as an adult, and I just can't get into it, is
Mhm.
Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah, I've had that problem, and I it's honestly also The Great Gatsby, I can't do it.
Yeah, I've tried with The Great Gatsby, I just can't really get into it like you said,
Mhm.
but with Catcher in the Rye, I think I got a few chapters in, and I had so much distaste for the main character
Yes.
and calling everyone phonies
Mhm.
that I just couldn't. I'm just like, no, like, this book just does not have me. So, I'm sorry if those are, like, some of your favorite classics, they are not mine.
Didn't slap for you.
No, they did not.
No.
Give me a dystopian world, though, and I'm like, okay."
I'll eat this right up.
Yeah, love it. If anyone knows of
So
any books of that genre, let me know.
that aren't just the same formula of people trying to repeat The Hunger Games.
Yes, please.
Yes, yes. I hope that they've gotten a bit better now. But mine is actually just a solo book that I read, I think 2 years ago now. And I'm kind of tying this one in where it's one of my favorites for exploring complex adult relationships. So, in no way, shape, or form do I agree with what occurs in this book, but I don't know if you've read it, but it's called Conversations with Friends.
No, I don't think I have.
Okay, so there's like a younger girl, probably like third year, fourth year of university. Her and her best friend get kind of intertwined with an older married couple who are like early 30s. And essentially, they're not a polyamorous couple, but they will have some affairs on each other. So basically, this young 22-year-old gets kind of intertwined with this couple and sort of becomes like a third person in the relationship, and she like really latches onto that as part of her identity. So that concept, I personally like would not love that, but I just find it a very interesting take. Like I think the author did a really great job at exploring each of the mindsets of those people, and
Mhm.
especially like exploring the fact where like when you're in her position, especially I think if I remember correctly, like she was pretty lonely, so when she was getting this man's attention, she was like, "Oh my god, I'm so special," especially comparing herself to his wife, who is like this tall, like elegant, like beautiful woman, right? You know, it's kind of that trope of getting it into her head of like, "Oh, well, he's going to leave her for me," right? And how
Right.
she like really latched on to that as something that kept her going, where it really showed the reality of that situation and how it just comes crashing down when you realize that, like, he's not going to,
No,
you know?
it's like age old, like, he's never gonna leave his wife.
Yeah, so I think, why I wanted to select this one because I did really enjoy the book, was just to tie it back into why I didn't like the young adult interpretation of what I would see as, like, toxic relationships, is the fact that there was no question here that this was a bad relationship or a
Right.
complicated relationship. Like, it was very clear that, like, you should feel uncomfortable with what is going on, but I
Yeah.
think that it was a great way of showing, regardless of how bad you could view a situation to be, you can explore the good and the bad in those people. And it's not that, you know, she was the heroine, he was the villain, and the wife was the victim. She explored the good and the bad of all three of those characters. And I just thought it was really well executed. So, for just like a nice, complex, deep dive into adult relationships and how the mentality behind those situations go, I would 100% recommend that one. It's by Sally Rooney.
Oh, well, yeah, no, that definitely sounds interesting because it's so refreshing to see an author just be upfront and honest
Mhm.
about that. Now, is that more of like a book obviously geared towards adults?
Oh, yeah, like, you wouldn't wanna read that as, like, a teenager. Like,
Okay.
it's kind of like, I would say that I was ready for it and ready to understand what was going on from, like, an emotional standpoint when I was about 22, 23.
Okay.
Because it's very easy to not like the characters. So you have to kind of go into it from a position of understanding what the motivations were that brought them there. It's kind of like a mental game you have to go through when you're reading it.
Right. And to
Yeah.
use a, let's to use a Disney reference,
Yes.
such as Inside Out, the emotions were very simple,
Mhm.
and then, like, as you get older, it's more complex, and you can
Yes.
explore more complex themes and
Yes.
have that rational understanding
Mhm.
and have that objective point of view, but also, like, a subjective point of view.
Yeah. So I just think that exploring more difficult relationships is something that I definitely think we should do. But there is an art to it that I think you can really only get in adult fiction because they're very complicated concepts. Like even like you just can't get there when
Yeah.
you're a teenager.
So even with like a young adult series, they can't present these really complicated relationships and themes.
Mhm.
But going back to our conversation of like, have things changed, it would be great to see authors explore being more upfront
Mhm.
without having to get so far into like messy
Yeah.
relationships.
Mhm.
Like keep them simple, but still present the idea that like, okay, this is fundamentally wrong.
Yes, I would like 2 things. One of them being, let's not make the main love interest a toxic bad boy who doesn't like anyone but you, because that is not realistic. And 2, if you are going to present a relationship like that, present it in a way where it really smacks you in the face that this is not something you should want.
Yeah, like it shouldn't be desirable.
Yes, that's a good word for it, thank you. So, yeah, that's the end of my tangent on that.
Awesome. Well, listeners, I hope you found something that you either want to binge watch or avoid. I think we're going to throw it up on our Instagram, probably in the stories. We'll do like a little poll of all of our choices and see if you guys like them or hate them. and
Mhm.
agree with us. Also, like, definitely share your favorite binges and your least favorites. And honestly, like, if you have any of the things that we brought up for like movies, TV shows, or books that you
Yep.
either loved or hated and you don't agree with us, like, let us know about that too, because we love having those kinds of conversations.
Mhm.
Anything else from you, Rachel?
Yes, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and give us a subscribe on whichever platform you listen to your podcasts because it really helps our show out and we would love to welcome new listeners. So, thank you in advance if you choose to do so.
Yes, and our Instagram handle is Tea with Laura and Rachel. Definitely follow us over on Instagram and we can connect. And with that, live like tea.
Live like tea.